Chosen one, heaven is not sending you comfort today. Heaven is sending you confirmation. The test that almost emptied you has been recorded as past. The season that made you wonder whether God still remembered your name has reached its boundary. And now, 3 sacred dates stand before you like burning signs at the edge of a divine door. May 18th, May 19th, and May 20th. Do not hear them as ordinary days. May 18th carries the sound of chains breaking around your finances, your resources, your survival pressure, and every old fear that made you check your life through the lens of lack. May 19th carries the awakening of your inner sight. When the fog over your purpose begins to tear open and the blueprint hidden beneath your pain starts rising with holy clarity. May 20th carries the cleansing of your atmosphere. When God begins removing what has been draining your peace, dimming your fire and pulling you back into a version of yourself you have outgrown. This is why you felt restless before you clicked. This is why certain people suddenly felt heavier to be around. This is why your old routines no longer satisfy you. Your soul is sensing a threshold. And listen carefully. If you leave now, you may miss the hidden key, the final secret that explains why the doors that rejected you were actually protecting you, why the delay was not denial, and why the fire that looked like loss was secretly building authority inside you. You have carried more than people know. You have smiled with a storm in your chest. You have kept praying when your hands were tired of holding everything together. God saw the private obedience. He saw the tears you swallowed. He saw the moments you almost gave up but chose to surrender instead. So before this message goes deeper, mark your agreement. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. Share it with someone who is standing in the hallway between pain and promise, and comment. The door is open now. Stay close, because what comes next will show you why the fire was never sent to bury you. It was sent to reveal the crown hidden under the ashes. The fire did not come to bury you. It came to prove what could not be burned. That is why this season felt so severe, so personal, so strangely precise, as if the pressure knew exactly where to touch you. It did not attack the shallow places. It pressed on the places where you loved deeply, trusted quietly, hoped secretly, and still believed God would answer, even when nothing around you gave you evidence. You thought the furnace meant rejection, but heaven was showing you that your faith was real. You thought the silence meant abandonment, but God was teaching your spirit to hear Him without needing constant signs. You thought the closed doors meant failure, but they were keeping you away from rooms that would have celebrated your gift while slowly poisoning your soul. Chosen one, you are not being punished. You are being separated from the version of you that could not enter this next realm. The fear had to rise so it could be broken. The false voices had to grow louder so you could finally recognize they were never the voice of God. The loneliness had to expose who was attached to your comfort but not committed to your calling. And the tears you cried in secret were not wasted. They became water for roots no one could see. C.S. Lewis wrote in The Problem of Pain that pain insists upon being attended to, and that is exactly what happened in your life. The pain forced you to stop pretending, stop shrinking, stop calling bondage peace, and stop mistaking delay for defeat. God allowed the fire to reveal what was false, but He also used it to uncover what was holy. You came out with sharper discernment. You came out with cleaner hunger. You came out with a deeper refusal to return to places where your spirit had to beg for room to breathe. This is why May 18th, May 19th, and May 20th matter. Those dates are not being spoken over the person you used to be. They are being spoken over the refined version of you. The one who no longer needs applause to obey. The one who can stand in darkness without surrendering the light. The one who learned that surrender is not weakness when the throne of God is guiding the outcome. So do not curse the fire. Do not romanticize the pain either. Understand it. The flames were not your ending. They were the evidence that heaven was preparing you for weight, authority, and visible breakthrough. And because the fire proved you, God can now trust you with what He once had to hold back. You were not delayed because heaven forgot you. You were hidden because the weight assigned to your life was too holy to be rushed. Let that enter deep. The years you called wasted were not empty years. The doors that refused you were not always losses. The silence that broke your heart was not always absence. God was covering you from exposure before your roots were strong enough to survive the wind. He was keeping your name out of certain rooms because those rooms would have used your gift, drained your oil, praised your light, and still left your soul bleeding in the corner. This is serious. You cannot step into a divine assignment carrying the hunger to be accepted by people who were never assigned to recognize you. You cannot walk through the door of May 18th, May 19th, and May 20th still begging old voices to confirm what God has already spoken. That season is over. The hidden place was not a prison. It was a womb. It was dark. Yes, it was narrow. Yes, it was lonely. Yes, but something was forming there that could not have survived under premature applause. Heaven was not trying to make you invisible. Heaven was making you unshakable every time you cried because nobody understood the pressure on your life. God was teaching you to stop needing human permission to obey a holy command. Every time you watched someone else rise while you stayed buried in preparation, God was removing comparison from your bloodstream. Every time you wanted to force a door and felt the Spirit restrain you, God was saving you from a blessing that would have become a battlefield. This is why you must pay attention now. The hiding is ending, and when hidden seasons end, things move faster than the mind can explain. The same God who kept you covered is now preparing to reveal you. Not for vanity, not for attention, not so people can applaud your survival, but because your assignment has reached its appointed hour. C.S. Lewis, in the Spirit of the Weight of Glory, reminds us that glory is not a light thing. It carries a burden, a sacred seriousness, a weight that immature souls cannot hold without being crushed by pride or fear. That is why God waited. He was not withholding love. He was building capacity. He was deepening humility. He was training your discernment until you could tell the difference between an open door and a trap dressed like opportunity. And now the atmosphere is changing. You can feel it. The old conversations feel too small. The old habits feel too heavy. The old places no longer fit the size of what God has placed inside you. Do not panic. That discomfort is not confusion. It is transition. It is the sound of your spirit outgrowing the room that once contained you. You were hidden for protection, hidden for preparation, hidden until the exact moment heaven could trust you with visibility. Now stand firm, because the covering that once concealed you is becoming the mantle that will announce you. The next sign will strike the place where you have carried the most pressure, the place where fear tried to build its throne, your provision. May 18th is not a small date in this message. It is not a decorative detail. It is not just another square on the calendar. May 18th stands like a divine line drawn across the ground. And on one side of that line is the old pressure, the old shortage, the old fear, the old cycle of surviving with tired hands and a brave face. But on the other side is a release that only heaven can authorize. Chosen one, listen with your whole spirit. The chain around your provision is breaking. Not because you worship money, not because you chase gold instead of God, not because you beg the world to validate you. The chain is breaking because you stayed faithful when lack tried to make you bitter. You gave when you were almost empty. You helped when you secretly needed help. You kept showing up when your own heart was whispering, I cannot carry this anymore. God saw the bills you stared at in silence. He saw the moments you checked your account and felt your stomach tighten. He saw the times you made something out of almost nothing. The times you stretched what should not have lasted. The times you kept your dignity while pressure was pressing against your chest. This is not just about money. This is about fear losing its throne. This is about survival mode being stripped of its authority. This is about the old lie being broken. The lie that said you would always have just enough to stay tired, just enough to keep moving, just enough to never rest. No, May 18th carries a different sound. It carries the sound of old chains snapping, of locked storehouses opening, of floodgates beginning to move under the command of God. The scripture declares in Joel 2:25 that the Lord restores the years that were eaten away. And this is the spirit of what is being released over you. Restoration with evidence, provision with purpose, abundance that does not pull you away from God, but proves that your Father never abandoned the work of His hands. C.U. Lewis, in the heart of mere Christianity, points us toward a truth many forget: when heaven is placed first, earthly things find their rightful order. That is why this provision will not be empty luxury, it will be alignment. It will be room to breathe. It will be strength to build. It will be the ability to stop living as if every blessing might disappear tomorrow. You are being freed from the panic that made you make decisions from fear. You are being freed from the shame that made you hide your struggle. You are being freed from the exhaustion of carrying responsibilities with no visible support. And hear this clearly. God is not releasing provision so you can become careless. He is releasing provision so you can become obedient at a higher level. The blessing has an assignment. The increase has a direction. The open door has a purpose. So when the signs begin, do not shrink. Do not apologize for answered prayer. Do not let guilt make you reject what grace has placed in your hands. You suffered quietly, but you will not always receive quietly. There are moments when heaven answers so clearly that even those who doubted you must recognize the hand of God. May 18th is a sacred signal that the drought is losing power, that the wilderness is not your permanent address, that divine provision is rising like a river after a long, merciless, dry season. If this speaks to the place where you have been under pressure, like this video now as an act of agreement, subscribe because this message is moving towards something even deeper. Share it with someone who has been fighting financial fear in silence and comment. May 18, the chain breaks. But do not stop here, because heaven is not only touching your hands. On May 19th, God begins touching your sight. And what you are about to see will explain why the confusion had to end. There comes a moment when your spirit stops asking for more signs and starts recognizing the ones that were already around you. That is what May 19th carries. Not noise, not pressure, not another emotional wave that fades by morning. May 19th carries the tearing of the veil over your understanding. It is the day your inner sight begins to sharpen. The day the fog that has been sitting over your purpose starts to lift. The day the question that has followed you through quiet rooms and long nights begins to receive an answer from heaven. You have asked God more than once, why am I here? Why did I survive? What should have broken me? Why do I feel set apart even when I try to blend in? Why can I sense things before I can explain them? And for a long time, it felt like the answer was locked behind a wall. You kept moving, but without full clarity. You kept praying, but with pieces missing. You kept serving, giving, waiting, hoping. But somewhere deep inside, you knew there was a blueprint you had not fully seen yet. May 19th is the sacred signal that the blueprint is beginning to unfold. Not all at once, not in a way that feeds impatience, but in a way that brings peace so strong you cannot deny it. A conversation will confirm something. A closed door will suddenly make sense. A strange burden in your heart will become direction. A dream, a scripture is a sentence, a memory, a repeated sign, a sudden knowing in your spirit. Something will align and you will realize God was not silent. He was arranging the pieces until your soul was ready to read the pattern. Ecclesiastes 3:11 declares that God makes everything beautiful in its time. And that is the mystery of this moment. Beauty does not always arrive early. But when it arrives by divine timing, it carries authority. You are not entering clarity so you can feel important. You are receiving clarity because your assignment needs movement. There are people connected to your obedience. Rooms are waiting for your voice. There are decisions you have delayed because confusion made you afraid to choose. But that fog is losing strength now. God is not giving you random inspiration. He is giving you blueprint level direction, what to stop feeding, what to release, where to place your energy, which relationship has been draining your oil, which opportunity is truly from Him, and which familiar path only looks safe because fear decorated it with comfort. This is where everything becomes serious. Once God gives sight, you can no longer pretend you do not see. Once heaven reveals the next step, delay becomes disobedience in disguise. It's Lewis often pointed toward the truth that faith is not merely a feeling we keep in private. It becomes real when it reshapes what we choose, what we love, and where we walk. That is why May 19th will not only awaken your emotions, it will challenge your decisions. You will begin to feel a holy separation from what once entertained you. Old distractions will lose their sweetness. Empty conversations will feel heavier. Places that once felt normal will suddenly feel too small for the person God is calling forward. Do not be afraid of that discomfort. It is not instability, it is awakening. It is your spirit standing up after a long season of being pressed down. It is the sound of destiny becoming louder than insecurity. And when your sight changes, your surroundings must respond. Because once God opens your eyes, He will begin to cleanse the atmosphere around you. May 20th does not arrive quietly in this message. It arrives like a holy wind moving through a locked room, touching what has been hidden, disturbing what has been stagnant, and exposing what can no longer remain attached to your next season. This is the day your atmosphere begins to shift. Not only your thoughts, not only your emotions, your atmosphere, the rooms you enter, the voices you allow near your spirit, the relationships that keep pulling you back into an older version of yourself, the habits that seemed harmless but slowly drained your fire, the conversations that left you heavy without giving you wisdom. God is putting His hand on all of it. And that is why the days around May 20th may feel intense, because cleansing rarely feels gentle at first. Sometimes peace begins with removal. Sometimes protection feels like separation. Sometimes God answers your prayer for clarity by making certain places impossible to stay in. Do not misunderstand this shaking. You are not being rejected. You are being realigned. You are not being abandoned. You are being protected from what cannot carry the oil of your next assignment. There are people who could handle your wounded version because it made them feel needed, but they cannot handle your healed version because it no longer asks for permission. There are rooms that tolerated your silence, but they will resist your authority. There are old patterns that survive while you were unsure, but they cannot survive now that your spirit is awake. This is why May 20th matters. It is the cleansing of the field before the seed of promise grows. It is the clearing of spiritual clutter before the divine door opens wider. Revelation 38 carries the weight of this truth. When God opens a door, no one can shut it. But before you walk through that door, heaven will remove what was trying to follow you illegally. Old fear cannot follow. Old shame cannot follow. Old agreements with rejection cannot follow. Hidden bitterness cannot follow. The voices that trained you to doubt your calling cannot follow. God is not only opening the door, He is guarding the threshold. He's making sure that what broke your peace in the last season does not get permission to poison your promise in the next one. So if certain connections become strained, do not rush to repair what God is revealing. If certain invitations suddenly lose their pull, do not force yourself back into rooms your spirit has outgrown. If silence increases around you, do not panic. Sometimes heaven lowers the noise so you can hear the command. Think of Nehemiah building the wall while opposition tried to pull him down from the work. He did not stop building just because distraction became loud. In that same spirit, you cannot come down now. You cannot abandon the assignment to entertain every argument, every accusation, every emotional trap, every sudden storm sent to steal your focus. May 20th is an urgent warning. Guard your atmosphere. Guard your peace. Guard your eyes. Guard your words. Guard the sacred signal God has placed inside you. This is not the time to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. This is not the time to keep proving your heart to those who keep benefiting from your exhaustion. This is not the time to drag dead weight through a divine doorway. Let the wind of God sweep. Let the light expose. Let the old dust leave the room. Your armor is being restored. Your discernment is being sharpened. Your space is being prepared for what your old environment could never sustain. If this word is touching the exact place where you have felt drained, comment May 20th, cleanse my atmosphere. Like this video as a sign that you are ready to protect your peace. Subscribe because the final secret is still ahead. And share this with someone who keeps mistaking separation for loss. Stay with this message because once the atmosphere is cleansed, heaven will ask for the one thing that unlocks the hidden key surrender without delay. The hidden key is not found in more pressure. It is not found in forcing the door, chasing the person, rehearsing the wound, begging for proof, or trying to make heaven move faster than divine timing allows. The hidden key is surrender, not passive surrender, not weak surrender, not the kind of surrender that lies down in defeat and calls fear wisdom. This is the surrender of someone who has finally realized that God is not asking you to lose yourself. He is asking you to release the false self you built while trying to survive. You had to become strong in places where you should have been covered. You had to learn silence in rooms where you should have been protected. You had to carry responsibilities that trained your hands but exhausted your heart. And somewhere along the way, control began to feel like safety. Explaining yourself felt like protection. Holding everything together felt like obedience. But now heaven is saying, put it down. Put down the need to prove you were hurt. Put down the need to convince people who benefited from misunderstanding you. Put down the old agreement that says, if you do not manage every detail, everything will fall apart. Chosen one. The next door will not open to panic. It will not open to performance. It will not open to the version of you that keeps one hand on God and one hand on what He told you to release. This threshold requires clean hands, a steady spirit, and a heart that can say, Lord, I do not see the full staircase, but I trust the step you are lighting now. That is the sacred difference between striving and surrender. Striving says, if I do not force it, I will lose it. Surrender says, if God assigned it, I cannot miss it when I walk in obedience. Striving makes you chase what is already beneath your calling. Surrender teaches you to stand still until the right door recognizes the authority on your life. See, Isaac Lewis carried this deep Christian truth through much of his writing. The self that clings hardest to its own control is often the self most in need of being remade by God. And this is exactly where you are. You are not being asked to become smaller. You are being asked to become truer. The old fear must loosen. The old defense must fall. The old habit of expecting disappointment must be broken before it becomes a filter over your miracle. Because if you enter a new realm still expecting betrayal, you will misread blessing as danger. If you enter abundance still wearing the mind of lack, you will treat provision like an accident instead of stewardship. If you enter divine visibility still carrying shame, you will hide from the very platform God prepared for your voice. So surrender is not an emotional decoration. It is spiritual surgery. It removes what would sabotage the promise after the door opens. It teaches your soul to stop gripping ashes when God is placing a crown within reach. It trains your spirit to obey before every question is answered. And it brings you back to the center where God is no longer an emergency contact, but the throne of your whole life. This is the hidden key release, what trained you to survive so you can receive what is calling you to reign. Do not be afraid of the empty space that surrender creates. That space is not lost. That space is capacity. That space is where divine provision lands, where clarity settles, where peace finally has room to breathe, and where surrender becomes your key. What was stolen can finally begin to return. Restoration is not coming back as a vague feeling. It is coming back with evidence. It is coming back in the places where life left fingerprints on your soul, where disappointment sat too long, where hope was delayed until your heart almost stopped expecting anything good. Chosen one. This is the part you must hear with courage. God is not only healing what hurt you. He is answering what tried to humiliate you. The years that looked swallowed will speak again. The peace that was stolen will return with authority. The confidence that was crushed under betrayal will rise with a steadier fire. The resources that seem to leak out of your hands will be gathered under divine order. This is not revenge. This is restoration. This is not bitterness getting a voice. This is heaven correcting what darkness tried to rewrite. You lost time trying to love people who only loved your usefulness. You lost strength explaining your heart to ears that had already chosen suspicion. You lost sleep carrying battles no one knew were happening behind your smile. You lost chances because fear, delay, or warfare stood at the gate and made you question whether you were worthy to enter. But the throne of God did not forget. Heaven kept record without becoming cruel. God saw the cost without asking you to become hard. And now the same places that carried evidence of loss will begin to carry evidence of His hand. Watch the pattern change. Watch peace return to rooms that used to feel heavy. Watch your name enter conversations you did not arrange. Watch provision arrive with timing too precise to call coincidence. Watch clarity come over decisions that once felt like a maze. Watch the very wound that made you feel disqualified become the testimony that gives your voice authority. Joel 2:25 carries the spirit of this promise. The Lord restores what was eaten away, what was consumed, what seemed taken beyond recovery. That means restoration is not God pretending the damage never happened. Restoration is God stepping into the ruins and making them speak a greater word than destruction. C is Lewis understood that pain when surrendered to God does not have to remain meaningless in their Christian imagination. Suffering can become a doorway through which grace enters deeper than comfort ever could. And that is what is happening here. The wound is not being glorified. The wound is being overruled. The loss is not being worshipped. The loss is being answered. You are about to see proof that your patience was not passive, your silence was not weakness, and your obedience was not invisible. What was delayed is circling back with divine purpose. What bypassed you before may return under a better covering. What you thought you missed may reveal itself as something God protected until you are ready to carry it without fear. Do not let old disappointment make you suspicious of new mercy. Do not reject provision because lack trained you to expect struggle. Do not push away peace because chaos became familiar. Restoration will require you to receive without apologizing, to rebuild without dragging the old ashes into every new room, and to trust that God can return more than an object, more than a person, more than an opportunity. He can restore your breath. He can restore your courage. He can restore your holy expectation. He can restore the part of you that stopped looking forward because looking forward once hurt too much. This is why the next movement matters. Restoration is not the end of the story. When God restores you, He also reveals you. And what you obeyed in private is about to speak in public. What you obeyed in private is about to speak in public, not because you begged for attention, not because you chased a platform, not because you needed people to clap before you believed God was with you. This is different. This is confirmation. This is heaven allowing visible fruit to grow from hidden roots, chosen one. There were seasons when you did the right thing and no one noticed. You prayed when no one heard. You forgave when no one understood what it cost. You kept your hands clean when bitterness offered you a weapon. You stayed faithful in rooms where nobody would have blamed you for walking away. And it felt at times as if your obedience disappeared into silence, but nothing holy disappears before God. Every quiet yes was recorded. Every unseen sacrifice carried weight. Every time you chose integrity over revenge, humility over pride, surrender over control, something was being built in the spirit that your natural eyes could not yet see. Now that hidden structure is rising. The light is coming on. The same people who thought nothing was happening may soon realize that God was working behind the veil the whole time. Do not misunderstand this season. God is not revealing you for vanity. He is revealing you for assignment. The spotlight coming over your life is not for ego. It is for evidence. Evidence that obedience still matters. Evidence that faith in the dark still produces fruit in the open. Evidence that heaven knows how to lift a person without them having to betray their soul to be seen. Your name is entering conversations you did not arrange. Your gift is being remembered in places you thought forgot you. Doors are being discussed before you even knock. Someone is looking for exactly what God placed inside you. Your voice, your discernment, your experience, your wisdom, your presence, your story. And when the call comes, do not shrink as if you are unworthy of answered prayer. You were trained for this in the hidden place. You were refined for this in the fire. You were strengthened for this when no one applauded your endurance. See His we come Lewis in the spirit of the weight of glory reminds us that glory is not light entertainment. It is a holy weight, something that must be carried with reverence. That is why God did not rush your revealing. He waited until your heart could carry visibility without bowing to pride, praise, fear, or insecurity. Now, the private altar is becoming public confirmation. The oil that was formed in silence is beginning to release a fragrance others can recognize. The light that survived darkness is no longer asking permission to shine. If this word is speaking to the part of you that stayed faithful when nobody saw, command. Private obedience, public confirmation. Like this video as a sign of agreement. Subscribe so you do not miss the final secret and share this with someone who feels forgotten in their hidden season. Stay close because what comes next is not only about what God is bringing to you. It is about the version of you that must rise to carry it. Here is the final secret. The blessing is ready, but the old version of you cannot carry it. Read that again in your spirit. The door may be open. The provision may be released. The atmosphere may be cleansed, the confirmation may be rising. But if you try to walk into this new realm wearing the identity that pain built around you, the promise will feel heavier than freedom. This is where everything becomes serious. God is not only changing what surrounds you, He is changing what you answer to. You can no longer answer to fear as if it is wisdom. You can no longer answer to shame as if it is humility. You can no longer answer to delay as if waiting forever is holiness. You can no longer answer to smallness as if hiding your light protects your soul. The old identity had a purpose for a season. It helped you survive betrayal. It helped you endure silence. It helped you walk through the wilderness when you had no map, no applause, and no visible proof that anything was changing. But survival is not your final name. God did not bring you through the furnace so you could live forever smelling like smoke. He brought you through so you could stand with clean authority, spiritual armor restored, eyes lifted, hands steady, and heart surrendered. This next level will require deeper discipline, cleaner boundaries, faster obedience, and a refusal to negotiate with the chains God already broke. You cannot carry abundance with the mind of lack. You cannot carry visibility with the posture of shame. You cannot carry divine assignment while still apologizing for being called. You cannot carry new oil while protecting old wounds like they are part of your crown. The wound taught you, but it must not rule you. The delay shaped you, but it must not define you. The rejection redirected you, but it must not become the voice you trust most. See one. Lewis understood that the soul is not healed by decorating its prison, but by being drawn out of itself toward God, toward truth, toward a larger life than fear could imagine. That is what is happening now. Heaven is not asking you to perform. Heaven is asking you to become aligned. Lay down the version that expects disappointment. Lay down the habit of shrinking before you are even opposed. Lay down the need to explain your calling to people who only understand your old season. The threshold is here, and the hidden key is obedience without delay. When God says move, move. When He says release, release. When He says speak, speak. When He says be silent, guard the holy thing and let Him work. You are not the person who begged for the door anymore. You are the one heaven prepared to walk through it. Stand still now for one final declaration, because the old season is closing and the door in front of you is not waiting for your fear to feel ready.